Good morning, Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy. Just got an interesting topic today, virtual currency. So it's out there, it's in the news right now, and it's something that kind of bedevils people. There's a lot of questions about it, and I had someone ask a question about it yesterday. Um, there's a lot of scams involved in it as well. So we're going to dive into it. There's the good, there's bad, and how is it treated? What do I need to be concerned about dealing with virtual currency and investing in it? So I want to dispel some of those myths, clarify how the IRS treats it, why it needs to be reported on your tax return, and go from there. So I'm looking forward to an informative show today, and hopefully we can answer a lot of your questions. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast here at Taxes Made Easy. Again, Hubert Johnson here with Guardian Tax Law, and thank you for watching the smartmoneyculture.tv. So, what's in the news today? I'm going to start with the news. So, we have a few interesting articles. There's a lot of things happening this week. So, on the 22nd, Friday, two things are happening. First of all, it's a deadline for the ERC applications. So if you're concerned and you don't think you're going to qualify for the ERC, or if you think there's a problem, that's your deadline to file, to do the voluntary withdrawal, as part of their program. But also you can look at voluntarily withdrawing your application without any penalties. So another big deadline is 22nd. It's another budget deadline looming. So this is for 80% of the federal government. Will the government do their job and pass a budget? And will they pass a good budget? So two questions there. I'm sure whatever budget is passed will have plenty of detractors and supporters. Who knows? Again, a lot of the stuff is happening behind closed doors. And to that effect, we have an article here. This came out yesterday that Speaker Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer say that they have a spending deal, but they need to introduce it into the respective houses, onto the House at least 3 days before they vote on it. That's the rules in the House. Again, they love to do this. They come in with a couple 1,000-page bill and say, hey, we need to pass this in a day or two. And people don't even know what's in it. Speaker Pelosi ran and was typical of doing this, and she's even commented, you'll find out what's in it after we pass it. The Republicans do the same thing. So here, this is Speaker Johnson dropping on the House this huge, gigantic bill. And the question is it going to pass both the House and the Senate? I would imagine it will, because with Republican leadership in the House signing on, it's probably a done thing, and they'll probably do it with the moderate Republicans and the Democrats. Whether or not you think that's a good thing is another issue. But again, that's some big news out there. Good for our company that the government is going to shut down. But again, it varies per person. And in my opinion, if we don't deal with the budget sooner or later, it's going to be a disaster. It already is getting very expensive to carry the amount of debt that we're carrying. On a similar note, how are they going to address this budget shortfall? Well, the Associated Press did a lengthy interview with the head of the IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel. So he's been running the IRS for a year now. And they love to say that they're going after high wealth tax cheats. And this is what they consistently say, look, we're going after high wealth. And the question is, how? And how many people in the middle class, even lower class individuals, are going to get hit by this? In my experience, the IRS has taken a much tougher tack, and they have changed their rules, under the current administration, that has hurt average taxpayers to even very poor people living on Social Security. They made it so much harder to qualify for an offer in compromise. They made it harder to do an uncollectible or a hardship status. And they've really hurt a lot of people going through this. So are they going to roll back the rules to before the Biden administration? No. So that's a big misnomer here, is that they're the kinder, friendlier, gentler IRS. And I have emphasized this plenty of times that historically, Republican or Democrat, they modified the rules a little bit to make these programs easier for taxpayers. With this administration, they've taken a 10 to 15 year step backwards. So again, I'm pretty irked about that, not very happy about it. But going back to this article with Mr. Werfel, the IRS commissioner, they are targeting jet use. That's the thing that they like to put out there. They're targeting people with ERC. And I talked to someone, they're assuming that if they got the ERC credit, they're business owners, they have money. Not necessarily true. Within the last couple of weeks, I met with someone who applied for the ERC, was going to get it, but then things fell apart. But here he is applying for it and went through a bankruptcy. His business is done. They're scraping by for money and having a very tough time with things. So just because businesses apply for the ERC credit doesn't mean that they're doing well and raking in a lot of money. And that's one of the main things they've been saying that they're going to go after. Large corporate filers, and again, most of those larger corporate files already have small armies of attorneys. They already have people there to defend them. It's smaller corporations that are going to get hit hard and not be able to handle this kind of increased scrutiny. And a lot of what we're seeing, it's not just people breaking the law. It's that they did things that they didn't know about, that they were confused about. People were given bad advice in the years prior, and now things are tightened up quite a bit. So a lot of the article talks about the Inflation Reduction Act and the $80 billion that they received in 2022, and that's where it becomes political, should they have that money or not. But the one thing that is good news is that Mr. Werfel emphasized how they're trying to show improvements at the agency. Am I seeing improvements at the agency since COVID? Not really. Do I hope that they improve service? Absolutely. So I support his efforts to improve customer service, but what I've seen more than anything else is increased collections and worse customer service. If you call the IRS now, most days you get a message saying, "We're too busy, call back another day." That's horrible customer service. It wasn't like that before. You might sit on hold for an hour, but eventually a case would get answered. We sit on hold frequently where it's 2 hours trying to help a client that will sit on hold. And we're trying to do other things in the meantime while we sit down on hold forever. But then at the end of 2 hours, the call just gets disconnected. And I'm sure plenty of taxpayers have experienced that. So again, this is a little bit of a venting session, or turning into one, about the IRS. So I really hope that they make this better for people. In some ways, I see that they're trying, but again, there's a catch here. The free filing through the IRS is the last thing that this article covers. If you can use it and you have a very simple return, great. If there's a problem, if the system messes this up, or you make a mistake because you didn't understand their program, you know what your recourse is? Zero. So again, they will have all the information that you put in to get your tax return prepared. And there's a big question: if they mess up your return or you don't understand, etc., you don't have anyone to give you good advice. And if you think you're going to get good advice from the IRS on how to save money, it's like asking the policeman, going to a prosecutor and asking for good advice on how to defend yourself. Now, I worked as a prosecutor, and I did have someone come to me and ask me advice, and I gave him very bad news because he had a good rap sheet. But again, that's highly not advisable. Talk to someone that's on your side that will give you a perspective and an honest perspective on what your rights and options are. I mean, there's times IRS gives good information, but there's plenty of times they give very bad information. So this is going to dovetail, this last article from CNBC is going to dovetail directly into what we're talking about today. And this is about the S&P 500. So if you've been paying attention to the market, one thing that's been very interesting is lately the market has been going up. And a lot of it's driven by Bitcoin. It's been driven by a surge in virtual currency. So right now things are on hold because guess what's happening? The Federal Reserve is about to announce, they're having a 2-day meeting. I believe today's the second day. So they're expecting the announcement anytime today on whether or not they're going to increase rates, hold them steady, or actually decrease them. So again, this is a juggling thing. The Fed is trying to cool down inflation. A lot of inflation indicators are still up, ensuring that inflation is increasing. But then that's bad news for the economy, especially with the struggling housing market that we've been talking about. So keep an eye out what's going to happen as the Fed changes their rates. It might prompt the IRS and states to increase their rates of interest that they charge as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on this as we move forward. So again, hopefully we'll have some more news about it tomorrow. So the topic for today is about virtual currency. Now, there's so much information, there's so much to cover when it comes to virtual currency. So an hour really doesn't do it justice, but we're going to be focusing on how does cryptocurrency cause problems with the IRS? How do you avoid these problems with the IRS? And how it can help or hurt your personal finances. And so we've seen this plenty of issues with cryptocurrency. And we're going to be focusing directly on cryptocurrency for the rest of the show. But we're coming up on another break. But we'll be back to cover this and more in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to Taxes Made Easy. We're talking about virtual currency. So there's a handy little frequently asked questions here on irs.gov. It goes way too much detail, more than the average person understands. There's 46 questions here on irs.gov, in particular when you look up virtual currency FAQs. So what is virtual currency? Basically, it's a new kind of thing that started with Bitcoin. And now you have all kinds of different kinds of virtual currency. So they're losing trust in the dollar. Can you blame them? It's really the only most powerful currency still, because other countries are struggling just as bad. But there's a global shift towards the yuan, China's currency. And that's mainly because, other countries, China, India, Russia, have been cut off from global markets, and so they are starting to trade with them, within them, and avoiding the dollar as the currency of the market. So again, it's kind of scary that the dollar, people are moving away from the dollar globally. And so given a lot of this concern, people are looking for other alternatives and have been. So, and again, a lot of that has to do with our national debt. So not to get into monetary policy too much, the history of Bitcoin, it's gone up, it's gone down. I would say it's been more volatile. It's a more volatile investment because there's nothing, it's not connected to anything. It's not connected to a company. It's not connected to any kind of production. You're investing in, if you could say a digital dollar, but it's not connected to the dollar. It's not connected to the U.S. government. It's literally connected to nothing. So it's driven by people's valuation of it and people's faith in other currency forms. Now, Bitcoin has been around for a while. Again, a good question, how long? So if you do a quick search, it was invented in 2008, started use in 2009. So about 15 years. And then again, El Salvador adopted it as their official currency in 2021. So there's this idea that you take something that's a free moving thing, politicians can't control it and just print more, but who's controlling it? The company Bitcoin. So that's the thing, it's always being controlled by somebody, but again, they're looking at something that gains value, a currency that gains value rather than the dollar or most other currencies, which due to inflation and other reasons lose value over time. So, the dollar is not worth as much as it is today that it was 5 years ago or 20 years ago. I mean, the further you go back, the dollar is eroded in value. Whereas when people put money in Bitcoin, this currency gains in value. So there are advantages to it that appeal to people. Where should I keep my wealth? Where I can be safe from inflation and inflationary pressures. So cautionary tale, as most people know, post-COVID, Bitcoin took a huge dive. A lot of people that invested in 2020, 2021, it kind of went up a bit, and then 2022, it crashed. And it's just now recovering. It's up quite a bit. So, again, this kind of take us to the last article of the day. This is specifically talking about the crypto market. So there's a market not only for Bitcoin, but for all kinds of, cryptocurrency today. Ethereum, Coinbase, there's digital wallets. The number and types of cryptocurrency have exploded. And that creates its own challenges. So, again, Bitcoin is still up 100. It took another big slide on Wednesday, but it's still up 124% in the past year. So if you held on to your digital currency from last year, it's back up. But again, the problem is people sell when things are low. They purchase, when things are high. And so that's, now people are taking some of this profit out of it since it's so high. But it is a much more volatile market. And we've seen a lot of people hurt by this. So one of the big questions is, how does the IRS even know about your digital wallet, your Bitcoin, etc.? How do they even know about this? Because the arm of the IRS is very long. Just think of that. And usually they have more information than your tax preparer, more information than even a tax attorney like us. Hands down, the IRS has more information than we do most of the time. When we go into negotiations, we'll have more knowledge about their current situation and recent changes and we can help advise clients to make changes that are legal to qualify for better programs. But again, I don't do anything that I don't disclose to the IRS. But as far as virtual currency, it all gets reported. So I've shared this story before. Again, it's very appropriate here. Guy came in, he was a plumber, and the IRS had come back and thought he had made 40,000 worth of Bitcoin transactions. And he was beside himself because off the 40,000, they were taxing him at 13,000 with penalties and interest. He said, "You got to be kidding me!" And he was newly married. In a new marriage, they were struggling. Like many new couples do. And you could tell he was a hardworking guy. So again, I wanted to really help him out. And so what happened is he took $1,000, put it in Bitcoin, bought and sold, sometimes high, sometimes low, and he just kind of went back and forth. But eventually, he was just playing with $1,000, and eventually he lost all the money. It's done. So he thought he never made any money off of it. So you can think of it like gambling, and this is how it really makes sense: is when people go in and gamble, they win, they lose, they win, they lose, they win, they lose. And so when you look at all the wins and you add it up, it comes out to a really high amount. But if you look at the wins compared to the losses usually offset it because most people go and they lose money gambling. Or, the gain is much, much smaller than what the IRS sees. So just like most sales and stock transactions, that Bitcoin virtual currency is treated just like any other capital asset. Stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, any kind of investment in the economy. That's how it's treated. So all of your gains are reported. Sorry, Printer decided to start dancing over here. All your gains are reported, but none of your losses. So you can see how this can cause some pretty serious issues with the IRS and trigger some pretty high tax balances. And I've seen cases in the hundreds of thousands. Had a case recently where we were moving to resolve it and actually put them in a hardship status where they wouldn't have to pay anything for a couple of years. And the IRS came back and said, "Well, hey, we're seeing $300,000 to $400,000 in gains from gambling." We pulled up the win-loss statements. The client had those, was able to send those to us. We were able to submit that to the IRS and get that taken care of. So again, it is very much dependent on the information that you have, having good records. So on your Bitcoin, in that case, how we solved it with the plumber, the $13,000 in debt, it doesn't sound like much to many people, but to them, it was a lot. It mattered to them. So we got his records, we submitted them, contested the IRS underreported report that they received, and we were able to get the whole thing back down because we were able to show that it was all losses, not gains. If anything, he lost money. This has hurt all kinds of people going from 2021 when the Bitcoin virtual currency market was really high, and then it crashed, and it crashed hard. So in that crash, everybody that made money in 2021 and didn't take all of that, they didn't take out the taxes for what they pulled out. All of a sudden, 2022, that asset's gone and they can't continue to make money off of their Bitcoin money. And so it's left a lot of people in the lurch with very few assets left, but they owe all these taxes. So advice number one, look at your gains for the year, have good records. So you don't have to track everything, but most of these companies, they'll provide you the statements, they'll provide you the information. And once you get that, you can use that to file your taxes. Just make sure you're getting that every year and reporting that. On a side note here, if you can't get that good information, be aware. So we talked about AI scams and a lot of other scams. I was talking to someone yesterday and they asked, well, aren't there virtual currencies that the IRS doesn't know about that are kind of flying under the radar? Can't I just invest in those and the IRS won't see it? So it goes back, what can the IRS see? Well, they probably, if they're not legitimate sources, the IRS probably can't see them. The problem is they're not legitimate sources. So I've had plenty of people that have invested in different Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, but different virtual currency websites. There's so many out there. And some of them make money for their clients. But any legitimate source is going to be reporting that money to the government. Otherwise, the government, when they find them, will go shut them down because they're doing unauthorized trading. And so this gentleman had invested in a few sites. A couple of them were legitimate, but about 8 out of 10 weren't. So he had invested in these sites. He was tracking them. They gave normal reports, this and that. And I've seen this, a few times where when he went to pull the money out is when the problems arose. And this is very typical. If you put money into a digital wallet or virtual currency, and when you try to pull this money out, and some stocks are like this that are shams, again, they're being run by crooks, and it's, the same thing happens on the stock market or whatever. They'll come up, they'll set up a dummy company, take investors' money, and then just go spread. It's a typical fraud. It's just moved into the virtual world as well. So when you ask for your money, they'll say, okay, we'll give you your money, but we need another fee first. And then they'll ask for another fee, and they'll keep asking for you to send fees. And the moment you cry foul is when they cut you off, you get no information. And when you report it to the police or the FBI, it's so common to have such a hard time keeping up with it. So again, the digital scammers, the identity theft, it's so common. The government is overwhelmed, and they're doing what they can. But again, I'd love to see more money instead of going after more and more Americans. I'd love to see more IRS resources being poured into chasing down these fraud scams. And they are trying to do that. And I've actually met people that were in charge of a lot of these fraud and fraud cases and going after and busted these sources. But a lot of them are international. And we need policy. We need foreign policy to actually shut down and force companies to stop doing this and to prosecute it when it's happening in their own countries. That gets into a whole other issue. So be very wary which virtual currencies you use. Bitcoin is out there. It's been around 15 years. It's well established. There's quite a few others that have been around. Coinbase is well known. There are different digital wallets that are well known. So if you're going to use that, try to use somebody that's more established, that's well known, and right now Bitcoin is doing very well, as well as the virtual currency market in general. But if it's some fly-by-night website that you don't know, that there's not good information on, be very wary. It very well could be a scam, just waiting for people to put money into it. And people do, which is why they run these scams. So you should be able to get good information, good reporting from whichever virtual currency you're using. You need to use that on your tax returns because guess what? The IRS has been asking for the last couple of years, there's a question on your return. Have you ever traded a virtual currency for anything of value? And the reason that they ask that is because there's so many new sites popping up that IRS can't keep track of all of them. But this is the way it is, and you have to sign your tax returns on the penalty of perjury. So what this means, did you take a virtual asset? Did you sell it? Did you trade it? Did you do anything with it? And it's not talking about the initial investment. When you purchase it with real money, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about when you already have the virtual currency, you either sell it, you trade it, because some people are now paying employees or independent contractors in Bitcoin. That's probably not normally what you're going to see. But if you do run into that situation, where people are trading Bitcoin for goods and services and they're trying to do a barter system, the IRS still taxes those transactions. They do any legitimate source, they're still getting reports and getting the information of what gains were made. So it's in your benefit most of the time to report it. Because if the IRS files for you, all they're going off of is the gains, just like gambling. If you don't report it, if you don't show the wins, losses, and be very careful, especially with gambling, going to multiple sites, it's much harder to track. Same thing with virtual currency. It's much harder to make sure you get all those reports when you're investing in all kinds of different sources. So you might not only take the loss if you actually lose money, but if you don't have the records for it, you get to pay taxes on what the IRS thinks the gain was as well. So it's a double whammy. So this is why it really can hurt people, especially if there's a huge drop in the market like we had in 2022. It's 22. Yeah, 22 going into 23. Now it's only been recently that it's been going back up. So again, when you have questions, you have concerns, get informed. Make sure that you are using legitimate sources because we see it hurting people on a regular basis. And again, yesterday I was talking to this gentleman about dark money or the dark web and how do you invest without the IRS seeing it. I'm sure there are ways to do it, but the more sketchy you go, the more likely it's going to be a scam. And then you're just throwing your money away anyway, if it's a scam. Again, there's so many scams out there. Getting your money back from scammers, especially if they're overseas, is nigh near impossible. If they're local, the first thing they do when they get the money is they go spend it. They go spend it as quickly as they can. So, just like most sources, when the more sophisticated you're getting, be careful. Now, can you invest in virtual currency through a financial planner? How do you invest and take advantage of some of these market swings and be safe? So we're going to touch on that when we come back after this next break, which is just coming up in 30 seconds. There are ways to do it. There are ways to be informed as you go through this. So as I mentioned, we're going to go over some of these facts from the IRS. There's a lot of them, but we're going to just hit the main points as we go through this when we come back and talk about how to make virtual currency work for you, not against you. So again, if you have questions, you can always reach out to us at guardiantaxlaw.com or give us a call at 520-485-7371. And thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching us here on Taxes Made Easy. We're talking today about virtual currency, benefits, drawbacks, again, the good and bad and ugly. So, like generally with most markets, the average person goes in and starts investing and they don't know what they're doing. I would fall in that category. I am not a savvy investor. It's not where I've put my energy, and again, I'm great with tax law. I'm not an investor. So if I went and I plunked down $10,000 and started playing with that on the market, and I was day trading and doing that, I'd probably lose it all because I don't know. That's not my world. So the average person goes in there and plays with it. That's part of what drives the market, is that the average person loses money. So what's the best way to do that? First of all, I know individuals that are very savvy with Bitcoin, virtual currency investing, and that's something that you can either talk to someone or learn. You can educate yourself, but it can be a steep learning curve, or you can go to a financial advisor. Now, typically, financial advisors have not touched or played with Bitcoin. So, again, just want to share a quick article here And this is from March 17th, so just the other day. And we're going to look at this real quick. If the computer will respond. There we go. So this is from Investopedia, talking specifically about Bitcoin and financial advisors. So when you go talk to a financial advisor, we're just going to skip to some of the key takeaways here. Not all of them, only 15% of them are recommending Bitcoin. Some of the larger companies are recommending Bitcoin or can recommend it, but it's not because it's a bad investment. It's mainly because it's new, they're itchy about it, they have fiduciary responsibilities. So some of these, again, the total market is up to $2.6 trillion for all cryptocurrencies. Again, you've had a huge increases over time, and it's become more mainstream. So more brokerages, financial advisors are starting to offer it, but they're behind the curve. It's a good way to diversify your portfolio, and it really works. It really works well to counter inflation, which is what we're dealing with now. Because again, your money isn't devaluing like the dollar is. Your money is actually going up. So again, you have some ETFs. So this allows more people to invest in it, but the question is, and the problem is that most people don't know. So here it is, 19% of advisors were able to buy cryptocurrency for their clients. Doesn't mean they're experts in it and well informed. So again, they have fiduciary duties here to not make negligent or unnecessary trades or misrepresented transactions. So if they give you bad advice and it's against industry standards, the investor can be held liable for their bad advice to you. So that's why a lot of them are very skittish about Bitcoin, and people are moving ahead without an advisor. So there are some, again, there are people out there that are starting to do this, CFP professionals, but at the same time, be aware, get informed, and if you want to play with it, do so knowing that it does go up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. If you want to do a lot of quick trades, you like anything, invest for the long term, and that's where you're going to make the most money. So again, this is where it talks about high interest rates are a boon for investing in income and portfolios like this. So mainly because you're personally seeing something that continues to increase in value, whereas monetary income goes down. So I want to share this article from the IRS as well. This answers more questions than I want to, and talks about stuff that leaves me in the dark. But again, this is a great resource about virtual currency. So again, if you just type in FAQ virtual currency, it'll come right up, and it has 46 answers on it. So it starts off with a very complicated answer as to what is virtual currency. Basically, it's like the dollar, except for it's another form of instead of being a dollar, it's like a virtual dollar, but it's not tied to anything. It's not tied to a government. It's a digital representation. So again, it just only exists within the digital world. Again, how is it treated? It's basically treated the same as any other investment. And then, will you have a gain or loss when you sell it, when you trade it, and you get real currency? Yes. Anytime you do that, there's a gain or loss on the sale. There are places that now accept Bitcoin or other virtual currency when you go and purchase it. So anytime you get an actual item, there's a gain on that, and you'll get taxed on that. And again, this is where the gains versus losses are very important. So anytime you have virtual currency and you use it, when you purchase it with real money, you don't have to. It's like that's your basis. So if you spend $1,000 on virtual currency, it's like you going and buying $1,000 go-kart or something. You just spent real money on something. It's not a taxable event. But if that improves, so if you, let's say you spend $10,000 on a car, and then it's an older model car, you fix it up, and then you can resell it for $15,000. You just had a gain from $10,000 to $15,000, and that's taxable income, minus any expenses or anything like that for fixing up a car. But if you, let's say you purchase a car, you hold on to it, and it increases in value because it's a classic, and then you sell it for $15,000. Done. That's $5,000 in gain from the $10,000 is considered your basis. When you spend $10,000 on digital currency, that $10,000 is your basis. So you'll never get taxed on that initial $10,000. If it goes up to $20,000 and you sell, that $10,000 that you gained is taxable. So it's a pretty simple concept, but then it gets really complicated because it goes up, it goes down. If you make multiple trades, the basis points change. So that's why you need to get those reports from your virtual currency company. So, so if you do any, you received, so again, this is asking, do I have to ask on the question, did I do any trades? This is for 2020, this is for 2021. And the answer's changed based on what you're answering. So if your transactions involving virtual currency or purchases of virtual currency with real currency, then you don't have to answer yes. When you're purchasing, you don't have to. But when you sell it, when you trade in it, when you do anything like that, that's where it becomes that. So again, the rules for capital gains are the same for long-term versus short-term. If you hold on to it for more than 1 year, it becomes a long-term capital gain, and it receives more favorable taxation. And then how do you calculate it? I mean, it goes through, there's more questions than I'm going to bore you to death with. But again, there's a lot of help out there. And so when you're talking to a CPA, when you go to file your returns, now this is where it gets fun. When you're trying to report this information, talk to someone that's savvy, that has experience with virtual transactions. Not everybody does. And I have good CPAs and tax preparers that I refer to all the time that's just not their thing. They're not up on it. That's not what they normally handle. So they're not a good person to handle your taxes. So again, it's very similar to capital gains, but if you have a lot of trades like that, I would absolutely recommend using a more experienced CPA that is familiar with virtual currency and how it works. Same thing if you go to a virtual advisor, you have to ask, what is your familiarity with virtual currency? I'd like to invest in this, but I don't know where to start. And one, do they even do it? Two, do they have that kind of experience? And there are plenty of programs out there where they will help in investing in the market and investing in Bitcoin. But again, it's one of those things, get informed. If you have 1,000 or 2 that you want to play with, fine. But unless you put it in there and you leave it and just see it increase, if you're doing a lot of daytime trading where it's up and down, that's where most people lose money. So be careful, protect yourself, and again, watch for any scams. Going back to these frequently asked questions, again, it gets pretty in depth. If you receive pay or you pay someone, so when you receive virtual currency from someone, either as a gift or payment for services, that is not a taxable event. But it does count as income, just like if you receive a paycheck. It does count as income to you. in exchange for any time there's an exchange of goods or services for anything of value that is taxable. Believe it or not, the IRS it is in their laws to tax barters. Barter or trades. I'll do this for you, you do that. So you avoid an actual change of money. So it's very hard for the IRS to track it. But legally speaking, they still want to tax barters or trades. So if you have two attorneys, and this is fairly common with two tradesmen, one person works on a roof, the other person does someone's plumbing, and then they just take that as an even exchange. They don't actually exchange money. The IRS wants to tax that. It's just very hard for them to do that. So that's one thing that is very hard for them to track and follow up. It's hard to do and get a decent exchange of services in most cases. So any other questions, talk and go to this FAQ. It gets really in depth. It speaks financially, so it's not the easiest to understand. But you can take these questions to someone, a financial planner, or find someone that's an expert in digital trading. Our own Fly Mackey here at the smartmoneyculture.tv is an excellent source. And he has a lot of knowledge. He's been trading Bitcoin for years. And he has his own show here as well. So again, talk to people, get informed, and don't want anybody losing their shirt over this. So again, there's a lot of pitfalls, but there's a lot of potential for gain here. So again, I would see this as a high risk investment. But long term, I would say most virtual currencies are pretty well, the main ones are pretty well established by now. And again, the hard part is getting help, getting informed. So read up on it and talk to different people. And if you can find a financial planner that has good experience dealing with Bitcoin, they're going to be the ones that are dealing with it on a regular basis and really watching the market. And you don't want to have all your money in Bitcoin. You want to have a balanced portfolio where you have some conservative investments, some more aggressive, and then you can have some high risk investments. And virtual currency is one way to have a more high growth profile or portfolio, and protect yourself long term as you invest in a balanced way. And just remember, when the market is down, that is not the time to sell. If you're relying on this for money, it really leaves people in a huge hole. And I can share plenty of horror stories of people that ended up in a hole. They made a lot of money in past markets when things were going well, and when things crashed with inflation going up. This is a tougher market now, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money. One last story. This lady came in, and we were able to help her. But her situation was that she only had $60,000 left in her retirement. She had lost most of it. That was pretty much all that she had left. She was living on Social Security, living like a pauper. Her son had experience as a trader. He said, "Mom, let me see what I can do with this $60,000." She said, "Sure." So he started trading with her money, and he made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of it. And our son started living very well. He had cars, he had a house. And he gave his mother a good chunk of it. So she probably made a couple $100,000 off it as well. And they were living very well till the market crashed. And there was this last time around that it crashed, 2022 and 23. And then the entire value dropped to around $6,000. He was being very aggressive, using a lot of options trading. Again, it gets very difficult. In the end, she owed a couple $100,000 in taxes, and she didn't care because she said, "Look, my son made me all this money. He really helped me. He was very aggressive, but now she's in this situation that needs to be dealt with." So again, if you find yourself in that situation, many people are, give us a call, 520-485-7371, or find us at guardiantaxlaw.com. We'd love to help you out and give you a path moving forward to find peace and help prevent these issues.